Hi, I'm Josh Rushing, and you're in The Stream. Today, a new Kenyan TV comedy about an NGO that does nothing, will make you laugh and cringe, is the mockumentary Uncomfortably True to Life. With me is our digital producer, Malika Bilal. Malika, I'm sure you have figured out I am not the beautiful Femi Oke.
You look a little bit different. Well, we don't have to worry because Femi isn't far. Virtually, she's practically in the same room. Femi is joining us from Social Media Week in Lagos, where she's with a few avid Stream members who are watching our show live today. Hi, Femi.
Hello there, everybody. As they say in Lagos, Alpha! That means hello in Lagos language. So we are here at Social Media Week in Lagos, where everybody who's anybody in Africa is here this week or here virtually. We have our own hashtag to take part in this conversation, and it's hashtag SMWAJStream. Whenever you see that, you know that those tweets are coming back from Lagos. Malika?
Well, we'll be looking for all of those tweets. I actually am already seeing a few, getting excited to put those into the show. Josh.
Great, thanks. I always like to think that Malika is not far, that she's with me wherever I go, via Twitter or social media.
There's so many ways.
All right, great. So The Samaritans is a new Kenyan TV comedy, winning fans online with its mockery of an NGO that does nothing. Foreign aid is a serious multi-billion-dollar industry, but it's also ripe for satire. Why? Picture this. Young foreigners land in a country they know little about to tell the locals how they should be living. Now, they may have the best of intentions, but sometimes that's not enough. The culture clashes can be painful, offensive, and as our guest will tell us today, so absurd you just have to laugh. With us from Nairobi is Salim Kishavi, the director and executive producer of The Samaritans. In New York, Jessica Alexander, the author of the new book, Chasing Chaos, My Decade In and Out of Humanitarian Aid. In Nairobi, Wanjiru Kamal Rutenberg, founder of Akili Dada, an NGO educating the next generation of female African leaders. And in Maine, Laura C., an associate professor of government at Colby College, better known on Twitter as Texas and Africa. I want to start us off with a clip from the show, The Samaritans. Now, let me set this up. This is the new boss having his first meeting with his team. He is a bit young, in his 20s it looks like, but his backstory is he has a couple of master's degrees from universities in America, and he's worked at his mommy's NGO for most of his life.
He's your boss, but as your partner. As stakeholders in this organization, I'm here to empower you to engage effectively with the BOP, to overcome inherent barriers to change, to build capacity for an effective local and national governance agenda within a social accountability framework that together...
To rain on your parade, but I need to work. And I need to call London so that I can help them rectify their obvious mistake.
Salim, in that clip, he says he wants to engage with the BOP. What is BOP, and what inspired this show?
The BOP is the bottom of the pyramid. It's another one of these amazing acronyms and buzzwords that run rife in NGOs. In terms of what inspired me, initially I have quite small dreams. I want to change the way people perceive Kenya. And a lot, when I was in film school, a lot of the movies and shows and documentaries are all about what we call slums and guns, which is, people perceiving Africa as a poverty-stricken place that needs help. And I've always seen it in an exact opposite way. I've seen it as a land of amazing opportunity, a place where you can invest, a place that has a conducive infrastructure and an environment that you can really flourish in. And I wanted to change that perception. And so this script that Hussein Kurji wrote gave me the opportunity to direct and produce something that actually shows a lighter side and a more cosmopolitan and diverse side of Kenya.
And at this point, it's getting a lot of buzz online. Malika, what's our community saying about it?
Well, one thing Salim says is that Africa is sometimes viewed as a place that needs a lot of help. So I just pulled up this tweet, actually from Naija Christians, is the Twitter handle, and they're tweeting us from Nigeria with Femi Oke. They say, NGO has been a blessing to a lot of lives in Nigeria and Africa. They generate a lot of volunteers passionate about a course. But Jessica, this theme is seen in another tweet. Sassy writes in, and what comes to mind is Westerners acting like they know better than us, looking down on us. It's a U.S. Scandinavian superiority complex. Can you talk to us about this white savior complex that a lot of people online have tweeted us about?
Sure. I mean, I think there is something definitely to it. And when I saw the clip of the mockumentary, I immediately identified with the characters that are on there. And I think we tend to sweep in and as though we're going to save the day, a very Western mentality that we know best because we've been educated, when in reality the people who are there have been dealing with whatever issues we're there to solve or help to solve for years. Their resilience is far more so than ours, coming from where we're sitting and coming from. And really, you know, we should be learning from them and their expertise because they know the local language, they know the local customs, they have been surviving in, you know, these places under these circumstances for far longer than we could ever, you know. So I think there is a shift currently about recognizing that, you know, local people are, you know, and local civil society, local private sector are really the first responders in any, at least humanitarian circumstance, and we're trying to better capitalize on the things that they do instead of having the arrogance to think that we know best. And,
Jessica, you've set up our next clip from the show perfectly, talking about how locals feel when Westerners come in. I'm going to play this off on my computer here. Hold on.
Years and years of taking orders from clueless, bureaucratic, privileged who sit in their ivory towers day in, day out, and having every opportunity for acknowledgement, advancement, and promotion taken away from me.
Yeah, so you can get a sense of how the locals feel there. Sure. Did you, when you were writing the script, did the workers or the person writing the script or yourself, did you have experience working for NGOs, or is this just so common there that you can kind of pick up on these stereotypes?
I have no personal experience working in an NGO. The writer and myself discussed at length a large number of stories that we've heard from friends, colleagues, and family who work within NGOs, that there's often a great deal of irony in some of the things that happen there. And by and large, it's considered not, I mean, I would say the local idea of what an NGO is that their intentions are good and they're here to help. The question is, how is it done?
Salim, I'd like to bring in Wanjiru here. Wanjiru, can you talk to us about the intentions of NGOs? Are good intentions enough?
As one my friend Jennifer Lentfer, who runs this blog, likes to say, good intentions are not enough. It takes more than good intentions to do good work, to do impactful work. And just because you mean well, just because you're driven and inspired, does not automatically translate into delivering real, meaningful change on the ground. And just to emphasize what's already been said, having people who are affected by the challenges you're trying to address be part of the decision making about how those solutions will be driven is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. They should be in the driver's seat.
Can you give us some examples of where good intentions have gone awry, in your opinion?
Oh my goodness.
I'm thinking about
Underwear
Clitoraid.
for Africa?
Yeah, well, tell us about Clitoraid as well.
Collecting sometimes used underwear to help African women who allegedly are being raped because of not wearing underwear. There's actually two different organizations that are doing this, one British, one American. And they raise money.
Malika?
You know, some of those, we asked our community for some of the examples of what you were just asking about these or aid organizations that aren't really doing things that help people on the ground. We've got a lot of good examples like blankets, things that, t-shirts, things that people in Africa don't necessarily need, but there is some pushback here that we're seeing. And Laura, I want to direct this tweet to you. Katerina says, going to Africa to help poor people is a dream for many Western people. It sounds ridiculous, but is that bad? What's wrong with wanting to help people?
I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to help people, but the question is, what gives you the right to be the person who comes into a particular situation, especially if you don't have a specialized skill set, if you're not somebody who has, say, a background in a particular area, like working with traumatized children or providing medical services, or any of the many other types of aid work that there are. We can all help just by contributing financially to professionals who are doing their jobs, to groups that are really making a commitment to working with local communities and helping those communities to prioritize what they need and how they're going to get there. But the issue is, as Wanjiru has pointed out, who has agency in those relationships? Who is actually getting to make the decision at the end of the day? And for those of us on the outside, I think most of us would be tremendously offended if someone came from another country, hadn't bothered to learn our language, didn't know anything about our culture, and maybe or maybe not had the expertise to supposedly help us. We wouldn't let those people anywhere near our children. And to put yourself on the flip side of the argument and think about what you would feel like if someone took that attitude toward you, I think can help us to think more about how we engage and how we can do better in the ways that we help people who really, who are in need.
Well, I have a really positive story to add to your point there. There's an organization, I won't mention any names at the moment, but they went in to build a pipeline. And they built the pipeline, and there was water. But within a few months, the pump for the water just broke down. And an anthropologist came on board and said, why don't you get the people in the area to assist you to build that water pump? And as soon as they helped build the water pump and took some ownership over it, it got maintained. It lasted for 3-4 years. And it's the kind of thing that we're trying to talk about in terms of our storytelling in the Samaritans, which is all funny, it's all a comedy, but it's not just about NGOs, it's about bureaucracies. And bureaucracies have a very tough time adapting to change. When something is not working, how long does it take for them to realize that this is not working and we need a new agenda or a new mandate? And I find that hilarious that it takes so long, and yet their job is to do exactly that, make changes.
Wanjiru, I have a son who's going to graduate college in May, and he has had this idea perhaps of after grad school going overseas to try to help in some way. What do you tell someone who has the best of intentions like that wants to go and help? Is it that their help is not needed, or is there a way that they could contribute?
I think what I found really powerful about the film and that I really appreciate is the way that it leads us back to the question that Laura is bringing up, the question of agency. Mm-hmm. Now, why is it that the U.S. financial system went into crisis a few years ago? Why is it that we didn't see hordes of teenage Kenyan youth migrating to the U.S., going to America to help the American people figure out their financial system?
Yeah.
Why is it, on the converse, that someone who has zero financial education would be sent to Kenya to run a microfinance organization, a microfinance program? Mm-hmm. These are the types of questions about expertise, skill, and agency. Just because it's from the West does not mean it's superior. What would I tell such a young person? Get the skill, become an expert.
Well, Jessica, I saw you nodding your head as Wanjiro was talking. I'm sorry, Wanjiro, to cut you off, but I saw Jessica nodding her head. And what Josh said was, what do you tell someone that has the best of intentions? So talking about intentions and motivations, I want to play you an audio clip from someone who's in the NGO world, didn't necessarily want to show their face on the show, but wanted to be part of today's discussion. And that's one of the people behind the blog, Stuff That Expat Aid Workers Like. I'm playing the audio clip now. Have a listen to this.
There seems to be a strong sense, for example, in much of the kind of popular conversation around expats, that expats should go into the field with kind of the purest of motivations and be willing to live at a particular kind of level or in a particular way as a demonstration of kind of those the purity of those motives, right? And so I guess I'm curious for the reaction of the panel about to what extent do those apply to our local colleagues as well.
So could you answer that, Jessica, for us, the distinction between local workers and ones who are flown in from overseas?
Well, there is a difference, of course. I mean, we're sort of kept in a compound typically where, we live together, and locals live with their families. I mean, they're from the area. One distinction that I always find troubling is, in security situations, we will be evacuated out of there if something should happen, whereas our local staff will stay. We don't have the means to, get them out as well. I mean, so there are these imbalances, and I think, when I first started out, I found this very, troubling. And, I too started young and very idealistic and thinking that, with my 2 master's degrees, I was going to come in and sort of save the world. And of course, I got, smacked in the face with reality. And that is that not only am I, just someone from the West who doesn't really know these cultures, and I leaned so much on my local colleagues and my the people that really were my mentors, actually. And just because I could write in English and work on an Excel spreadsheet and a budget, that made me more technically in charge, when in fact the reverse was really obviously true.
Jessica, there's another stereotype of NGO workers, and it's called going native.
How was your vacation? I got married. Oh, well, that's wonderful. Congratulations. I can't believe it. You married. To who? Musa. Oh, Ati Musa.
Salim, I'm just curious, do you know any NGO workers there who've watched this, and how have they reacted to it?
Most of the NGO workers I know who have watched it, they love it. Because maybe they know somebody who has had exactly that experience, and you see a lot of them around. It's funny, although for them it's very real. But it's funny, and I love the irony of it, because it's just one of those things you see a lot of, and we love to comment on it.
I love sitting here and taking a poke at NGO workers for something that every journalist I know, me included, are guilty of as well. Are there any characters that are journalists in the show coming up, Salim?
Yes, we have a lot of cameo roles for characters like that, journalists who come in there and start making their own, taking their own version of what they want to be the truth and telling it, twisting it to their advantage.
Well, not only do they do that, Malika, twist it to their advantage, but they'll go and report on something horrific happened, and then they'll stay at the intercon, in the evening. And I know I've done that as well, and I know that you've lived overseas too.
Yes, I have. And I actually, what I'm pulling up here on my screen now is something that I can relate to. Tweeting us from Nigeria, BL Compare says, it's not fair and it's annoying when both foreign and local NGO staff has equal qualifications, and she's referencing an earlier tweet saying that they're not paid the same. Laura, someone else chimes in, it happens here in Nigeria, it's not fair. Some NGOs pay local staff less than foreigners. Of course, as a journalist living overseas, I was paid more than some other expats who weren't Westerners. So can you talk to us about that discrepancy?
Sure, and it's a very real discrepancy, and it's really unfair. It's really unjust. The vast majority of international aid agencies, the kind of groups that you see making an appeal on the evening news or in a commercial, have very different practices for the salaries that they provide expatriate aid workers versus local staff. And often the local staff are the ones staying, this is their community. They stay forever. They know the terrain, they know the language, they know the institutional history, they know what's worked and what hasn't worked in the past. And they can be paid, 10% of what an expatriate aid worker makes in a given month or over the course of a given contract, when in many ways they're working just as hard, if not harder, than that expatriate worker. And I think that this is something that, as things become more transparent, as we have a world of social media, where we can talk about these things without the institutional controls, it's going to get harder and harder for NGOs to justify treating their local staff in this way. And that's especially true when you take into account the fact, that local staff are generally not just supporting themselves and their immediate families. They are people who live in difficult situations and who are supporting hundreds of relatives, extended members of their kinship group, people in their village, paying school fees for kids who can't afford school, paying health center fees. Whereas your average expatriate aid worker might be supporting an immediate family, might just be single and alone and is still making so much more money. And really, the justification is just not there.
Wanjiru, is it fair to talk about this within a framework of it being a new form of colonialism?
I mean, absolutely. It's in important ways. It's assigning different kinds of, going back to assigning different kinds of value and saying what is African is not as valuable. That local contextual knowledge is not as valuable as imported Western knowledge. And so, in very real ways, it's a form of colonialism. Going to this question of the pay, often what we find is actually the differences don't emerge in the base pay, they emerge in the benefits packages. And that's where the gated communities, the massive SUV, and I just want to highlight what Laura was saying about the differences that emerge around that.
Femi, what do you think? You're there in Lagos as a journalist.
Because, as much as I agree to a large extent what's being said over there, I think like many other things in life, there's a scale, there's a continuum, to a certain extent. There are NGOs that do have that unfairness in terms of the way they treat local versus international employees. But there are certain NGOs that are very effective in the way they manage and deal with their work in these countries, especially in hardship areas. And within that continuum, I would also like to answer your previous question, which was about why do people actually choose? What do you tell someone who wants to come and help, And we found that we have each of the characters in the show sort of typifies a specific reason of why they want to help. And what some of them is like the glamour of it, the glamour of saving Africa, the the money that they might be getting, and also whether it is the guilt. They're trying to assuage some sort of guilt. And so each of the characters sort of displays a certain thing, but altogether they might merge together to actually accomplish something significant.
Right. Well, Salim, we're going to end the TV program there, but stick with us because we're going to show a couple more clips from the Samaritans in our post-show. I want to thank all the guests who are with us and to Femi and her crew for joining us from Social Media Week in Lagos. Femi, you should be bringing back lots of new ideas and maybe some Nigerian treats for the team next week. All right, stay with us. The post-show is next at stream.aljazeera.com. And on the next show, Yemen's map, it's being redrawn again. The plan is to give more states more power, but will this make existing divisions even worse? Until then, we'll see you online.